bit exciting. Hi everyone, welcome to the Alma Primo Best Practice Day, ANZREG in July, our first ANZREG in July. And just thank you for coming, for participating today, and we'd like to introduce Joanne Clark to the University, and also to say thank you, Joanne, for providing this facility and also, yeah, thank you.
I'd just like to say a little bit of a welcome to you, and first of all I want to pay my respects to the Darug people. Our library and our university are located on their land, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and to the Darug people as traditional custodian. And great energy in this room, almost every seat taken, very, very good. And I noticed the ANZREG in July. I'm afraid we don't have any snow, but if you managed to come up a little bit higher elevation, there might be some snow there. So I hope you have a really great day, and it's wonderful to see everyone here and to see kind of how far things have gone with Ex Libris, with Alma and Primo in Australia and New Zealand. So I was in the day one meeting yesterday with the directors, and we've got a lot of great information there, and it's great to see all of you guys here sharing and exchanging your ideas and practices. So have a great day, and I hope you enjoy your visit to Macquarie University. I hope you all got to see the robots. Yeah? Okay, we're going to show the robots to Maddie this afternoon. So we'll make sure he understands how they fit into the whole picture of Alma, especially. So thank you very much, and we're really happy to have you here. Thank you. Great.
So we're going to ask Annette to come and tell us some housekeeping stuff, just to get us organised.
I get really exciting stuff. Toilets, if you go out this door here, look towards the stripy wall, there's a doorway in it, and go through the doorway and there's a corridor. Toilets down there. We're breaking for lunch into a room, 2 rooms away from us, so up that way. And there's going to be coffee and water and everything is available there all day for anyone who wants that. We're going to organise taxis just before lunch, so remind me if we forget to do that, but we'll be doing taxis then. Anything else that anyone needs to know?
Do you want to mention the streaming, just so people are aware?
Sorry, we are streaming this event. We're hoping that the sound is working if I'm standing here and not over there where the microphone is, but there are other microphones around the room. So we're going to be streaming this, and we're going to be being recorded as well. So those will be available on the website, the ANZREG website, as soon as we finish the PowerPoints and recordings, as soon as we can get them there, hopefully next week.
Okay, thanks, Annette.
For those of you who don't have your own Wi-Fi access, there's the network you can use here is called Enrolments, and the password there is Macquarie. Sorry about that. They forgot to do it for us, so this was the best they could come up with at short notice. It's not, it was going to say ANZREG and all those fancy Enrolments.
Yeah. And just, it's a very informal day. Please feel free to ask questions, to participate. Just a couple more introductions, and a thank you to, so Ex Libris near Sherwinter is here from Ex Libris with us for the day, and Ex Libris have provided the pens, they're USB pens, so Mia, do you want to give instructions on it?
Just try hard.
Thank you.
Because yesterday people just left the pen on the table.
Yeah. So there's enough for one each. So, and just some introductions. So Helen Loosli. Helen is the Deputy Coordinator of the Alma Product Working Group. Jenny Quilliam. And Annette and I are members of the ANZREG committee, and Megan Lee here is a member of the Alma Product Working Group.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll hand over to Justin and Simon, who are going to kick us off with Primo Usability Testing.
Do you need this?
I might do. All right, thank you. I'm going to go first. So I'm Simon Huggard. I'm the Deputy Director for Research and Collections at the Trobe University Library, and Justin will follow after me. We thought we'd do 15 minutes each and questions after each of our talks, but if you do want to interrupt at any time, as Sue said, it's a very relaxed day, so questions, interrupt, something I've said that doesn't make sense, let me know. So I guess a bit of background on what we did. So the Trobe University, we moved from having Summon and Millennium, which we had up until the end of 2014, and we went live with Primo in January last year. At that time, we were also going through our restructure of the university, including the library, so a whole lot of changes all going on at the one time. And we looked towards Alma and Primo providing us with a new infrastructure to do things in a new way. I guess, and one of those things was, a part of a restructure, of course, is the downsize and staffing, so you need to be more efficient, you need to be able to do things a lot better. And lots of changes in the way we deal with students and what we do in our work. So I guess less face-to-face training, more online and self-help and all those kind of things. So that's an interesting one at that time when you go through a period of changing your complete interface to your resources, and then you're not doing this kind of mad scramble of training everyone in how to use it. That didn't really happen. So that was one interesting outcome of that change. So we needed to simplify access for our users and make that work well. And but another issue, I guess, that complicated all of that was that there were some problems with our data when we went live with Primo in January last year. We had a whole lot of broken links because of a range of reasons, I guess. Changes from the 360 link resolver and trying to match the knowledge base in there and the Serious Solutions knowledge base with the Ex Libris uResolver knowledge base, and some issues with our data that were a problem going forward when we went live. So all of that complication was kind of interesting in what it produced in sort of last year. So the issues, I guess so what happened is we at the end of 2015 decided to do a usability study of our interface to really address some of those concerns and some of the problems and issues that happened that we heard about during 2015. We had a great team of people logging all of the problems and dealing with all the issues. And then, so we got a lot of information from our users, lots of issues that we needed to look at. And so we put together a brief for a commercial usability company to do our usability testing for us. So some of those things, major concerns up there. And in the streaming, I presume people streaming can see the slides, so I don't have to read them out. Is that right, or are we just doing audio? Okay. I don't want to read out everything, but there were some common issues here around too many clicks to get to the full text. We'd been using Summon for about 4 or 5 years, and I guess the Summon interface had that issue of the sort of direct links to full text, which our users quite liked. So in the Primo interface, that changed in the sense that it produces the services menu for the different for resources to be able to go to the full text, and there's often quite a lot of choice, and particularly the fact that also at the Trobe we have a lot of backsets and different providers for our resources. It's not unusual, but we do have a lot of options there that people have to choose from, and it wasn't really clear where they needed to click and get through to the full text. Requesting of items is also an issue with the get it, the view it, all those kind of things in Primo, and people were quite confused about all of that. And one reason we also went to we used a usability company was we wanted to have a sort of an independent voice, a company that would do the testing for us on their premises in the city in Melbourne, and you know, they wouldn't be influenced and directed by us doing it for, you know, with our students. Because often you can, you know, even though you don't want to tell someone the answer, it's sometimes really tempting to sort of push them towards what they're trying to do. We had 10 participants. I'm sure people can't read that slide at all. I can't read it either unless I put my glasses on. But I guess what we tried to do was have a range of participants across our student body. So at La Trobe we have 2 colleges. We went from 5 faculties to 2 colleges. The College of Arts, Social Sciences and Commerce and the College of Science, Health and Engineering. So we wanted to have students from both sides. We wanted to have male and female. We wanted to have undergraduate and postgraduate, and so we wanted to have and a range, I guess, of courses, types of courses that people were doing represented. So we got a pretty good representation across that user group. I won't read them out, but I guess you can read the slide later on. So what I'm showing now are slides that came to us that are actually straight out of our report from the usability company, which was Simplicit. These are the slides that they gave us. It's about a 50-page report that they gave us in PowerPoint, explaining what the results of the study were. So I'm not going to show 50 slides. I'm going to show about 7 or something, which are a bit of a summary of what happened. And this is their summary of the outcomes of the testing. So there was the good, the bad and the ugly, I suppose, the little icons there, the little smiley faces, and the sad face and the red face. And they were the ones that they sort of categorised as being things that the students found were good, things that the students found were a minor problem, and then what they considered to be serious problems. And then under the arrow underneath is the recommendations that should come out of that testing. So we did our testing. I guess the testing was done, it was an hour each student, and they also had homework that they had to do before they did the testing, which was around how do you search, thinking about what you do and providing a diagram of how people find information. That was really useful, and I'll show a screenshot of that. Then the usability testing started from our library homepage. So our library homepage has the search box in it to go to Primo, and so it wasn't just a plain Primo search box, it was actually starting from our library homepage. So there was quite a bit of feedback about our library homepage and how that affects people using that and finding resources from that page. So the good things were the fact that the catalogue search is right there on the library homepage. That's what that first one means. Having catalogue search journals and databases as different tabs for them to go to from that homepage. And the date filters, and one of the better user experiences was the My Account login and the usability of the system when they were logged in. There were minor problems around overall look and feel, fonts and font sizes, being able to see what they needed to do, and action items, those kind of things. Aesthetics, some actions, some functionality actions. The look and feel, the resource types are a bit of an issue. And then the serious problems were really around, none of these are a surprise to you, I guess. Display of search items, relevance of search items, the advanced search. So we have an advanced search option. They didn't understand that at all, didn't even know why we had an advanced search option, and when they used it they couldn't understand anything in it. The refining of searches, linking, I guess, facets to actual subjects and disciplines and understanding what they needed to do to find the information that they wanted. And then the whole issue of searching and placing an item on hold was a big issue for them. So this is a display of our homepage and some of the comments at the bottom. The little comment bubbles are from the students themselves and what they actually said. So the homepage was too busy. They really didn't like the fact that there was so much sort of noise going on the page. So, and the repetition of the left menu here, which has the same items down the bottom of the page, they found confusing. Why on earth have we got that? So we've actually changed that since. So if you go to our library homepage these days, that left menu is completely gone. And that design of that page was of course is directed by our university content management system, our website. It had to be designed that way. We had no choice. But by doing a usability study, we said, here's the results of this bit. can you get rid of that menu? And they said, oh, all right, we'll get rid of the menu. It was kind of interesting. International students struggled with some of the language. I think most of that's around things like they didn't understand alumni, what that meant. They didn't understand that word. So there's lots of different things on that page they didn't really understand, and they wanted it to just be quite simple. And then this is the start of the search options and what that looks like and what they liked about it. They liked the fact that they can do the search from this front page, the home page. Overall, they were able to search for information easily to get to what they wanted. But there are some comments around here of what things should be changed. So it should, if you spell something wrong, it should come up with "Did you mean?" I searched for a particular topic, nothing came up, which is not a good sign in my topic. So some confusion, a bit of sort of mixed results there, but overall quite liking the search from that page. But as you can see, we're not really into Primo yet, we're into Primo now and what Primo does and what those results look like. So minor issues were that when they do a search and they get to the results page, they'd really like to get straight to the full text and download it from there. And all this clicking and going and viewing and getting to it and logging in and going to the next bit and finally finding the thing, they didn't like it all. So that's not just Primo, that's around integration and single sign-on and other things that we could be doing. The facets on the left they found far too long and too complicated, but then it was a bit confusing in the sense that some said that they liked the facets and they wanted to see more of them. So there was a bit of a sort of a mixed result there. I don't know what this blobby thing is doing here.
So, have you made any changes to your facets since this review?
We've put in an ebook limit on our front of our library homepage and in the system itself. So that was a clear one that people said they wanted to limit to ebooks and they didn't know how to, and there wasn't anything in there. So that was one change we've made. Yeah, definitely. So there've been some incremental changes to those, but we've also been looking at the results and collating them and then deciding, do we make the changes now and fix them, or do we wait for the new user interface that might fix some of those results anyway? An interesting one was many students didn't find listing the Dewey Decimal Number helpful, and they would have preferred details around maps and subject areas and maps in the library to be able to find the material. What we found is that a lot of students said they'd actually never borrowed a physical book, and they were very focused on electronic resources, and that then having to go and look for a Dewey number and go to the shelves and find something was completely beyond them. They had absolutely no idea what to do. So that was a really interesting finding. We've had some feedback to say that we didn't have, a humanities student involved in the testing. So we had some social sciences students involved, but not a humanities student that might have perhaps already borrowed a whole lot of physical material previously that would have been given us some useful feedback. So that's something we'll address next time we do this again. They wanted to, so some of the icons and things needed to be changed to make it easier. They wanted to be able to do multiple selection of resources to be able to limit to those and look at them, those kind of things. But overall these were sort of minor issues, and there was some discussion around abstracts in e-journal results, that kind of stuff. Major issues. So issues around relevance of search results, I think that's a common thing, and our Primo interface uses the Primo Central Index every time you do a search, so they're going to get a lot of results back. So it's got to work well for them and be able to provide good results the first time. So they found that confusing. They didn't find the subjects matching their disciplines, so that was difficult for them to then narrow down and find what they wanted. Overall, students felt finding relevant items was a bit of a trial and error. They didn't see the sort by relevance option, so the sorting options weren't that clear. They didn't see the view all items, the Ferberization of different items up here on the right. They didn't see that. Found it very, very hard to know what that meant and didn't even see the option. So there's some, interesting recommendations there about trying to change the look and feel a bit, make things a bit more obvious, and look at how we can improve limiting. So students struggled to find the latest edition of books, so they didn't sort of see that. Searching and placing holds was the worst sort of part of the usability testing, so that's the thing they found the hardest. But the interesting thing was that they found that better once they were logged in and then went back and did searching and weren't prompted to then have to log in if they weren't logged in already. So we had one student, I think, who spent 10 minutes trying to find the request button, which is not a good result. So being able to have that in a place that prompts a user for the next action item, that makes sense to them to be able to log in and request something is a really important thing. So that was an interesting one. And you can see some of the some of the comments there that the students said. There was also the thing that they've already searched, they've already limited to a location, then they go to request something, and then they've got to go back and tell it what location they want it from again and where they want it sent to. Why am I something again when I've done all this? You know who I am, I've already logged in. So not a lot of intuitive features in there that could possibly be improved. So they found that confusing. And the company continually said to us in their reporting that, remember, these students are used to Google and good websites and just the way that those sites work. And so if ours doesn't work that way, they're going to struggle to understand it. So the My Account login, we have a My Account login from our homepage. People actually really liked that. It was directly there. They found that really good. The bookmarking, the quick links and things on there, a lot better. So that was a good story. That is also we're actually going to use this part of the usability study to drive our request to our ICT people to review that issue of single sign-on again. We want to have single sign-on in Primo in our institution. So you're already signed into the computer. Why do you have to log in again? And why do you have to log into Easy Proxy? And why do you have to log into something else? Drove the students completely mad. So hopefully that's something we can use as a bit of a driver. And what we did at the end of the study, we did this in December last year. The new user interface wasn't ready. We kind of missed it by about 7 days or something. So But there were some screenshots that I'd been sent from Ex Libris, so we printed sort of poster-size 3 printouts of the new user interface, and that was done as part of the testing to say, what do you think of that? You've gone through all this testing for 3/4 of an hour on the old interface. Here's what the new one might look like. What do you think? What's your reaction? So there are a lot of things in there that they quite liked. They liked the look and feel. They seemed to notice things. For example, they noticed the sort by relevance function because it was in a better place and they could see it easier. They liked the facets on the right. I mean, you can do that in the old one anyway. They said they liked the resource covers being displayed. Well, they're already displayed in the old interface. But, anyway, they liked it. And they liked the colours. Yeah, there's an interesting comment there. LAT in the comments means Latrobe, so everything is a different colour. Latrobe is all black and white, really dull. Yeah. Anyway, we're kind of all driven by what our marketing people think. So this is a poster of the homework that one of the students did. And so lots of comments here around, I really like this section of the library website. Easy to quick to use and narrow down results. So that's the facets here. Always start here on this library search tab. Like this bookmark over on the right, which is, I don't know, are you seeing my mouse? I don't know if you are. My mouse is displaying here, but it's not really displaying there. I guess I should be pointing. I've just gone forward. Top. Okay, so this area here is the sort of quick links. They like that, the login. There's lots of things that they really like on our homepage. Websites they use, they talk to you all about Google Scholar. Government and organisational sites usually start with the Trobe library. That was a bit of an unusual one. All the other students, I think, said usually start with Google. Use this databases tab here. So our library homepage has a databases tab that just takes them to the databases list. It's not taking you to Primo, so they really like that. So to sort of summarise and finish off, our site usability score was 49.1. So it's kind of a scale of out of 100, and so 70 is really where you want to be. 50 is not where you want to be, and 30 or 20 would be pretty terrible. I think we had 2 students who rated 70, and the rest a lot in the middle, around 50, and some around 20, right down below. And the site usability score is a standard score used for websites where people are asked about 10 questions about your site. Would you recommend it to other people? Did you find it easy to use? Did you need to have help pages to help you even use that site? So it's a standard set of questions that are used around usability testing. So it gives you a really good independent view of how well your site's going. We, all of the usability study, we put all of the things that were recommended, or everything that was mentioned, into a spreadsheet. So there were about 56 items that were identified as being things to do that came out of the study, which is a reasonable number. 47 relating to Primo, and the other ones relating to the website itself, so like getting rid of that left-hand menu. We sorted them into categories in terms of what we've... so we have a Primo reference group. We have people in our collections team who do this work, including Rachel. Thank you, Rachel. Does a great job in that area of looking at categorising what those issues were, what we can fix, what we can't fix, what's in the new interface, what isn't, what we can do straight away now. If we do it now, it'll be in the new interface as well, like wording changes and things. We've fixed, a number of things already. We've made a decision to move to the new interface because it has appeal, it has improvements in it. We haven't decided when, whether it's February or July next year. And we're working through resourcing that and how we're going to manage it and get that done. And we are keen to retest the interface. Once we've done all that, gone to the new interface, made all the changes, gone to the new interface, then sort of validate where are we up to now. Because then we get a really good benchmark as to how much we've improved things. And our users, we've talked to our users and explained through our user committees about this, and they're very pleased about what we're doing. So I think I'm out of time. Sorry, Justin.
So you'll have another, like a study group of people?
Yeah. Yeah. Whether we'll use a company or do it ourselves, it all depends on funding, I guess. It's reasonably expensive to use a usability company.
You paid the students?
And we paid the students. That means they turn up. We pay them, sorry, I can't remember. It's either $50 or $100, so it's a reasonable amount of money. So they feel like they're earning something, and they'll put in the time, and they'll do the homework, and they'll turn up, and they'll do the testing. So, which is really good. Okay, thank you. I'll hand over to Justin.
Cool. Thanks. Firstly, thanks to Simon for that great presentation, and thanks to Megan, Annette and Sue for organising this. It's very appreciated to have another, I suppose, mini conference in the middle of the year. So I think it's a good change, and I think a big turnout, so I think a lot of people appreciate it as well. So I think it's, thank you, and I think it's really good. First, I suppose, we'll talk about usability testing at Swinburne, and I suppose how our definition of that has changed over time, and I suppose where we are at now, compared to where I suppose we first started the whole journey with usability and Primo and all that type of thing. So it's changed quite a lot with how we do that type of stuff. So a bit of a background. I suppose usability, even when we first started Primo, which was 5 years ago, was pretty much the whole library was pretty much organically accepted and embraced usability as a thing. It wasn't like a top-down thing that we've got to do usability or it needs to be taken seriously. I think everyone understood and really appreciated usability, and we're probably lucky we've got an in-house usability expert, which is Dana McKay. She's doing a PhD on library usability studies, and she does a lot of research on everything that is electronic, digital, all our academic archives, all that type of stuff. So we've had a lot of input from Dana, which has been very, very useful. And the benefit of having her, even though she doesn't train us in, say, usability tools, it's just having her, she does, I suppose, help influence other people throughout the university or library on the importance of usability when it comes to our various systems, and that has helped make usability, I suppose, a thing that everyone cares about. And when new features come out, we will just organically think about what's the usability impact of that. And it's not a thing we have to check, it's just, it's not a tick box we have to do, it's just something that just happens. So I suppose when we haven't done any big formal type user testing, or not since I've been there. So what we've done, I suppose, is I think 2012 we had a broad survey done by one of our librarians, Lauren Dunstan, who I didn't mention there. She's not a web or usability person, but she's quite familiar. She looks after our repository, and she, I suppose, knows a bit about web and usability. She did a very broad and extensive review, not looking at just library systems, but looking at anything that is search, e-commerce, home pages, any of that type of stuff, and documenting what is the best practice for, like, what would a student expect, and benchmarking what, I suppose, our Primo against what is the best out there in any type of system, organisation, any type of thing. And that was pretty much, that document has set our search agenda and our usability agenda forward. So it has helped define, I suppose, how our Primo looks and how it functions, and how we think about search as a service and usability. And so that was about 3 years ago, and we've done a lot of work, and we still are doing a lot of work based on that survey. But I suppose where we're at the moment is more, I suppose, data-driven usability, and I'll talk about that later. So that's, I suppose, my domain expertise, is just looking at using the data, all the data that we can get, and using that as our usability testing and our usability tools, and understanding what our students want and how they're using Primo based on what the data is telling us. But I suppose one of the other important things is, I suppose the mindset that we have at Swinburne, or that I've found, it hasn't been, again, not top-down, but I suppose a lot of the people in the library have a very open, user-focused, I suppose like most libraries and librarians, student, user-focused, and very adaptive, quick to change, based on new and emerging behaviours. If the students are doing this type of thing, that type of thing will get supported straight away, rather than being more pragmatic rather than dogmatic. So it's, I suppose that mindset has helped a lot with how we do usability. So the broad survey, which I'll talk about, so it looked up, so it was not just what is the relevance of the search term, but what is search. What are students doing with the concept of search? What should we display? What are the words that we're using to define Primo records? How does that relate to what a student expects? What fields we are displaying? What are we calling those fields? Do they care about publisher, author, and all that type of stuff? And Lauren pretty much looked at every single part of Primo, and against every single part of what other e-commerce systems do, Google, Amazon, everything, and what do students expect from a modern search system. She didn't look at what can Primo do, what can't Primo do, next release, whatever. It's just what is the best, what do they expect. And the main but she did with the understanding that it has to still fit in with the Swinburne template and Swinburne branding requirements. So that was an extensive document, and it was very good to just, I suppose, people thinking more about search as a concept rather than Primo as a product, and we're not thinking about features or whatever, thinking, I suppose, bigger concept about what students actually want from a system and what we mean by usability. So some of the things that came out of it, this was probably on the left, this is probably the first design of our Primo that came out post that review, and this is our current one. So it's changed a lot to get to the one on the left, and it's changed a lot again to get to one on the right, and it will change more in the future as well. Some of the most important things that came out of Lauren's work was definitely no tabs. So in the old days we used to have 3 tabs at the top, and again before Primo Central everyone used to have multiple tabs, but once Primo Central came out, everyone can live with a single search box. So that was pretty much one of the most important things was single search box, no collections, no siloing, no drop-downs to say search courts reserve, search whatever collection, search medical collection, just one box that should be like Google and just give the students what the hell they actually want and not asking them to do a whole lot of work up front. The other main thing was total rethinking and redoing of our facets. So you'll see here, so obviously here are our, we don't have any, in normal Primo you'll have format and type and a whole lot of other things. We've greatly simplified and reduced our facets based on, I suppose, Lauren's work on what students actually want. They don't care if it's, they don't want to select online, then type book, and then format electronic. They just want an ebook now. So just get that, give them what they want, as simple as possible, and really reduce their mental load on to do what they actually want. So, and our facets, they changed extensively there, and I'll show you the stats on how much is used, and they're still changing at the moment. Once we had a DVC that was very, very upset. They immediately wanted to see print, so we put that in. So that's, I suppose, adaptive to where possible. And we will keep changing them based on how the collection changes as well. So I'll talk a bit later. We've changed the, over here it's called video, and now it's called video and audio. We'll talk about that later. So it's another, I suppose, usability thing on, and again, how Primo works. So it's giving, how our collection has changed. We have to change the Primo interface to give the students what they want. And it was, again, not library focused, 100% user focused, and we're not looking at anything what Primo can or can't do. So there's lots and lots of different mock-ups that Lauren produced, just photoshopped everything. What is, so here's one that doesn't have any facets at all. It's just straight Google type results, and threw up lots of different designs to see what is the best practice out there for search, not just library search. And so we were quite open, and our current design, I suppose, reflects heavily on that broad survey that was done. And I suppose after that, where we're at the moment with our usability testing, I suppose, data-driven usability. So we'll try and track many different things. So we don't look at Google Analytics like page views or hits or clicks or whatever. Try and look more deeper about what the student is doing, what are they actually searching, how are they using it and why? Why is this happening? And is that a problem with Primo, or is it a problem from the website? And how can we give them better results? I mean, a lot of times we can't fix Primo relevancy, but sometimes students, why are students looking for certain things? And it might be, the answer may be outside of Primo. And I'll show you a bit later some examples of that. So with, I suppose, our data-driven one, we collect a lot of statistics on the library website as well as in Primo. A lot of it is custom statistics, but it's all historical and live up to the minute. I haven't used too much of the Primo Analytics that's currently out there at the moment. We will. But we do a lot of more custom stuff, and we find it very useful just to be able to see how the user behavior changes. And the user behavior pretty much is like usability. If the users are doing repeatedly doing a specific thing, then either that's a problem or a changed behavior. And this is how users are using Primo, and we will react accordingly. So here's just an example of just some data of how user behavior has changed a lot. So this is how the searches that come into Primo, a lot of these will come in from Blackboard. Before, when we first started out in the old days, it was all course codes. So a lecturers would say just search for HAH 101 in Primo and you'll find your course readings. Now that's dropped down to only a small percent, and in red is direct links. So we've got our own Primo short URL direct link in Primo, and so all lecturers and students will, I suppose, deep link into Primo. So this is I suppose, a user behavior change, and we will update and change Primo in accordance to the changing behavior of the students and lecturers. So we can't, I suppose, tell the lecturers how to do it if, we, I suppose, help the students and help the lecturers use it in the way they want to use it, which I suppose is how we see the role of Primo, working with the students how they want to use it. Because we can't force them to use a library system, they just want to use it like Google, and we'll just have to make it as Google-like and support whatever behavior they are doing. So that's one example. So, and here's another example with our, I suppose, data-driven usability. It's all our stats are all live and also historical, and we try and look deeper into what users are actually doing and looking for. So here's just something a tool that we use. I give this to the liaison librarians as well, so they can see what their students are searching for right now. And we'll group a lot of the search terms. If you see orange in here these are searches for database. Red is exam papers. We group them, we merge a lot of the search terms together so we can see patterns in the search behavior. Green is a known item. A lot of times I'll say I want accounting 101 textbook or whatever it is. And we have some other ones that may not come up. So in here we can see, everyone is at the moment searching for databases, which is just EBSCO, IBIS, all that type of stuff. Why is that happening? Why aren't they searching for whatever? And this is, we have our stats to understand what students are doing and how they are using Primo and what are they expecting. So, and I'll talk a bit more about databases because this is one of them, an interesting one. So our searches for databases have tripled in pretty much since the same time last year. And if we didn't record our stats or try and be data-driven, like, why is that happening? What are students doing? And this is a big change on how students are using Primo. And if we don't update our Primo to help students find the databases quickly, then we're failing the usability of Primo for our students. And with one of the main things of why there's so much searches for databases is we had it's probably like Simon, we had a university web page upgrade, and we lost probably control of our website, and marketing said this must be on your homepage and you can't have database links on your homepage, all that type of stuff. So before we used to have just links to EBSCO on the homepage. Now people go, I don't know, where is EBSCO? How do I find EBSCO? So there's the same thing, Australian standards, IBIS, all that type of stuff. So now they're all coming to Primo looking for these databases. And so we've had to update Primo, do a lot of changes in Primo to make sure that students can find databases. Because currently at the moment, the second one there is Australian standards. Everyone just types standards online, Australian standards, where it's catalogued as SAI Global. Now, this is our biggest search term and no one can find it. And that's a very recent change, but if we don't update our Primo and our cataloguing, we'll immediately fail the usability and fail delivering our students what they're looking for. They're all looking for SAI Global, but no one knows it's called that. So we've had some very liberal cataloguing to change SAI Global to Australian standards, and now it does come up. It was currently ranked number 3 in a search for Australian standards. But these are all catalogued, grouped live, and we will look at this data all the time to understanding the changing user behaviour. And again, this is another one from a bit while ago, is when the change started to happen, suddenly our top searches were slowly becoming databases. Here, I think 10 out of the top 30 were databases. Now, if you look at it, it's like 6 out of the top 10 are databases. So we have to continually monitor the data or how students are using the system and react to it, but also look at the root cause of why is this behaviour, what's happening, what's driving this behaviour. And if we don't understand what our students are doing and why they're using the Primo, we'll fail to deliver. They'll think, oh, Primo's not giving me the results they want. Maybe as librarians we might say, oh, it's giving them the wrong thing because they're not looking for the right thing or whatever. But we just have to accept that students are using it in a different way than they used to be. They're not thinking it's a library catalogue now, they're just thinking it's like Google for the library. And we just must update Primo to reflect that. So here's another example of how searches for databases have changed. So red is IBIS, blue is Australian Standards, grey is EBSCO, and light grey is all the other ones. So I wouldn't have known, a lot of other people in the library would not have known that IBIS is so huge and so popular. I didn't even know what IBIS was, but it's our number one most important thing. And if we don't get this information to the liaison librarians and to all the other librarians, they won't know what students are expecting. And I see these type of stats not just as usability, but also an extension for the liaison librarians and acquisition librarians and your data set librarians. I know there's all those counter stats, but here you can see what do they really want. When we're changing, signing up new databases and that type of stuff, what are they really using? So being data-driven as for usability, but it helps many other things throughout the library. And the most important thing is to get this type of data out there to the librarians and other people who make decisions based on this. And I'll go back, Simon, you mentioned facets, so I'll talk about this one. When we cut our facets in half, the number of facets in half, and all the librarians wanted more facets and more facets, the use of those facets doubled. So now instead I don't have a screenshot here, I couldn't even fit it on one page, the number of facets we had, it doesn't even fit on here, and now I've only got a couple and they're extensively used. And instead of having to, what is a format, what is a type, what is, the students don't have to think about delivery method or all this other librarian thing, just give them the information how they want it, and we see that as a core part of usability. So it's not really, probably does reduce the amount of clicks, but it's helping the students get what they want, which I suppose the whole purpose of the library in Primo. And we will, I'll go back, here's another example of, so we track many things, and it's not URLs or anything like that, it's more this is clicks on facets or use of facets, trying to understand how they are, when they're in Primo, how are they using it, what are they looking for, and even before they come to Primo, what have they been looking for. So this here, and I'll show you another one. For this, what we used to use is a tool called, this thing here is called Mixpanel. You have to pay for it. It's like Google Analytics, but you have to pay for it. But we've been able to use this to track many other things. On the right here is more, I put this in for Dana's research stuff. This is in virtual browse. Who clicks previous or next, and which one, when you're in virtual browse, do the person click the first one or the third one or whatever. So this was to help, she's doing her PhD research on how people browse like ebooks. and how that is different from how they browse, you know, a standard catalogue. So in Primo, we can track how many people in virtual browse, who's clicking previous versus who's clicking next and where they are. So we can understand if it's being, you know, this new feature, is it even being used? Should we just turn off virtual browse? What's the other one? And the other one here is, got this one as, this is our own custom permanent links that we put in Primo search results and Primo records. So just want to track who's using it, who's creating it, and is it a worthwhile thing. If it's no one's using a feature in Primo, we'll just turn it off. If it's not useful, we'll just turn it off. So here's another example of, so we're tracking our facet usage. If you look at if you do log into Google Primo Analytics, it's sometimes understanding what all those facets are. It's quite complex, all the codes are used. But we've cut our facets down and we've got more custom reporting. It's quite easy for us to see which facets do get used the most. You might be able to see this, but peer-reviewed articles, books, e-books, journals, and show online. And last down here was our video facet. And because of the change in our collection, we had to change the video facet. We didn't know what to call it. So when we do our usability, we might mock up all the different words on what we will call this facet. And we'll take it to, we've got our own, suppose Simon's got Primo reference group, we've got something like that. A few different people from throughout the library, and take it to them, talk about it, and put it out there, and we can test it as well with statistics. Are people using it? Are people not? And here currently is just called video and audio, but for any of these type of interface changes, we'll mock it up, put it up, and just see what works and what doesn't. And because we've got the data behind it, we can easily see if it's not working, we'll change it to make something that does work. And one of the other things with data-driven, before we do a change or before we implement, say, a new Primo feature, a lot of the new Primo features we never turn on. If we don't think they're useful, we just turn them on or don't hide them. But if we do turn them on or we do change things, have statistics behind it and I suppose measures to say, is this change positive or negative? If it's a negative change, maybe we'll reverse it back or do a different change like that. So for any of the changes we do for Primo usability, try and track it so we can have some evidence behind it to guide our decisions. So I know evidence-based librarianship is quite, a big thing at the moment, and we try and do the same thing with Primo, guide our usability through whatever evidence we can get. Okay, now this slide's an interesting slide. So I was talking, this next slide is a good one. Simon said that everyone hated the left menu. We had our marketing people made us change Primo quite drastically, and I wasn't a fan of it, but we just had to do it to fit into it with the university. And this is some of our results we got back. Okay. Website is horrible. It's absolutely terrible. So if there's for any Ex Libris people, if you're talking with the new user interface, I know they're doing a lot of usability testing, but we had a designer give us a nice, sexy design, and all our students, hated it. It looked really nice, but it wasn't working for them as a search system. And for any Ex Libris people here, be very cautious with the new Primo UI. It looks very sexy, but does it work as a student search system? So that'd be a takeaway from that. Be very careful with how you change the interface, and make sure your focus is 100% on the student experience and why are you giving this to the student? What are they looking for? They don't care if it's sexy. I just want to see my thing now. So we had lots of horrible feedback, and we've we change it. So Megan, here's Monash on the left. So even though Monash is just all white and that type of stuff, it's got, when you do a search term, you will see 8 or 10 search results. When the marketing people gave us our design, you could barely see 3 results on a page. It was all huge text, huge pictures, and it looked very sexy, and it fitted in with the corporate branding. And again, being data-driven, we can try and track the change in user engagement based on this new design. And now we've got the stats, we can have the power to go back and override marketing. We can say, look, no, this is not working, and it's not because I feel I don't like it. It's because the numbers are telling me that, you know, the student engagement has dropped. They're not getting what they want. We need to change it. And because we've got the data behind it, we can have the power to change, you know, Primo to, it needs to be a library system and not a marketing search result system. And so just as an example, with Lauren's work and the Primo Ref, our own working team, most of the time we will pull apart every part of the Primo interface and look at all the wording, all the placement, all the icons, everything, and change it to make sure it's giving our students the experience that we think they want, and try and back that up with numbers. And that is our current interpretation of, or my interpretation of, usability. That's how we do our usability testing is, yeah? Right, so yeah, if anyone's got any questions, just shout them out. What works well? We use, I'm a huge fan of Tableau, the Tableau business intelligence or reporting system. I know people look at a lot of different things. I'm a very, very, very big fan of Tableau. It does amazing things. So all this type of stuff is, we do it in Tableau, and it's live, and it's super simple. And I know in other type of systems you may have to get your report, it takes a long time to get a report, then you download it in Excel, then you've got to process it all yourself, and then by the time you've done it out of date, it's Tableau, it's all live, it's all up to date, and I can't rave about it enough. It's really helped get that type of information. We can quickly visualize the change in user behavior straight away, rather than waiting till people are yelling at us. Why can't we find it IBIS? Why can't we find whatever? Based on these type of things, we will go and change, you know, we will put in more keywords, change all the editing of mark records based on what the student wants, not what, you know, the catalogers or the publisher wants. This one, again, this one here is called Mixpanel, and it's really good kind of Google Analytics alternative for you to understand what is being used in your system, to try and yeah, we do have Google Analytics on the site, but we don't use it that much. It's not as, we don't care how many page hits or whatever, doesn't mean anything. It's more like the interactions of what the students are doing is the most important thing. And here is more information. So my slide, this slide here is online at the moment. And here I've got some previous slides and some previous information on our Primo customizations and the usability and the data work we do behind our Primo. Any questions or comments or anything?
Just a really quick question. You mentioned you're tracking Google Scholar and EBSCO usage versus library search.
Yeah.
Can you explain a bit why you're doing that? What that means?
Okay. So that is just, I'll just go back to that one. So that is just basically what is, this one here is like EBSCO and that type of stuff. This is the search results of the people, the stuff they're actually typing for. And like this currently the top 5 is all databases pretty much, but based on the change done to the website. So now because we can see everyone searching for Google Scholar EBSCO, we've now got the power to go update our own library website and put all the links back onto the home page. So we're about to change a whole bunch of pages on the library website to say we need direct links to EBSCO, Google Scholar, IBIS because of this data. And once those changes are done, we expect that search results will go back to people looking for books rather than actual databases. And the other change we did, we created our own A to Z databases system as well, based off the huge demand we had for people trying to find databases. So that's why we track databases, EBSCO, Google, all that type of stuff.
Why do you have to change it? I mean, if they're finding the database through Primo,
yeah, but they're not.
So these are things they aren't finding.
No, this is stuff they're searching for. We can then just go and replicate the search, and it's very easy to say people search for standards online are not finding SAI Global.
So that's what
And if they're searching for IBIS, we replicate that search, and if IBIS World is not #1, we'll do something to make it #1. So to make sure whatever they're searching for, they get. So, and we'll update lots of records to boost them, to change them how students are actually searching for them, rather than how we think they should be searching for them.
This thing, Justin, is one of the, I think, really fascinating presentations on Primo.
Cool.
It all makes us feel like we have to look a bit harder than we are at the moment.
Oh. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's fine. No, that's it.
Thank you.
So our next session is, our next, which I can't say, is waste and data,
Alma Analytics.
Alma Analytics, comparisons of top 10 most useful reports and why. So we'll just start with Rachel.
Okay. All right, good morning. My name's Rachel. I work at La Trobe University Library with Simon. My role involves the administration of Primo, Alma, library systems such as Easy Proxy, dealing with day-to-day and longer-term troubleshooting, and general electronic resources. Now, when you heard that you were going to attend a session on analytics, you probably thought it was all going to be on usage statistics. And I have to admit, analytics is great for usage statistics. It's a fantastic resource for that. But when we were looking at La Trobe at our top reports and looking at the ones that were the most useful, we discovered that ours actually usually involved problems, solving and identifying problems. And these were problems to do with our Alma setup, to do with our Primo setup, to do with our integration with various library and external systems, with order records, item records, bib records, you name it. We were even able to discover problems with places and things such as Google Scholar. So I'm going to start by talking about a few problems that analytics has helped us to solve. Now, first problem I'm going to talk about happened a few months back. We were finding a lot of books on our hold shelf weren't being picked up, and they were languishing on the shelf for over a week. Even more, they weren't actually going onto our expired hold shelf list in Alma. And when our shelvers took them off manually and tried to scan them in, they went back into the hold shelf again. So my response was to go, let's go to analytics, do a report of all these problem items, and add as many fields as possible to see if we can spot a pattern. Now, you could get most of this information by going to Alma directly and looking at various item records, but the trouble with that is you'd be doing so much copy and pasting, you can't open it in different tabs, and it would take a lot more work. Whereas in analytics, you can easily spot patterns, and that's what we were able to do. We were able to spot that there was this hold shelf processing that they all seemed to be stuck in. Now, the hold shelf processing is an extra step you can take with your hold shelf, and that isn't actually putting things on the hold shelf, it's sort of preparing them for the hold shelf. So what happened was, if you don't scan when you're doing the Alma check-ins and you don't scan place directly on hold shelf, Alma puts it in this hold shelf processing area. And that means it prints out a slip so it looks like it's gone on the hold shelf, but the student doesn't get a notification. And that means when you try and scan it in again, thinking you're returning it back to its normal collection, Alma actually thinks you're moving it from hold shelf processing to the hold shelf. So that was explaining why we had all these items staying on the hold shelf for ages and then scanning and going back on the hold shelf. And a lot of these were really popular titles with lots of requests, so this is a bit of a problem. But thanks to analytics, we're able to identify this is what's going wrong, and it helped us to inform our library staff, always make sure you place directly on hold shelf. And we were able to get a list of titles that we knew had to be fixed straight away. Now, we've set up a daily report because we understand that mistakes are still going to happen. And so this is a daily report that lets us know of all the items that have mistakenly gone on the hold shelf processing. And we know, OK, we've got to scan them again because it wasn't done properly. And we've also got, let me see if I can move this. Yep, we've also got a notification if the date they've needed is passed, so we know not to put it on the hold shelf, but it can go back to the normal collection. Okay, so on to a different problem, completely different problem. We're currently in the process of setting up integration between our Alma acquisitions and our finance system of the university. So we want invoices to be paid directly in Alma, you approve them in Alma, goes to finance, and it's all done. At the moment we do this manually, and it's a lot of extra staff time, there's a lot of double handling, duplication of work, and there's a lot of increased potential for mistakes. Our finance department are happy for us to move this way, but they do have a number of stringent auditing requirements, and those were, they wanted only specific users to be able to approve invoices. They wanted a record of every user that had approved an invoice and every invoice they had approved. And they also had the requirement that users who approved an invoice couldn't be the people who'd actually created that invoice. We couldn't get them that information from the Alma acquisitions, but in analytics we could provide them with a report, I've anonymised the data here, of all the users who'd approved an invoice, if they had created that invoice, so there's that extra check to make sure they're not the same person who created it, and then all the details of the invoice. And that's emailed directly to finance, so they've got that for their records. They came back about a month or so later and said they just had an extra requirement, and that was they wanted to make sure that system administration people couldn't log in as an acquisitions approver and approve an invoice as that person. Now, that is possible, but luckily analytics keeps a record. So every time you as a system admin log in and change an invoice approver's record, there is a record that's run as a daily report, and that's kept just as a second check, and that's sent to finance so they can double check it against invoice approvals. Okay, I'm going to move on to a problem with a different university system integration, and that is our student information system. On a daily basis, we get our patron load from the student information system. The student records come across. Usually they come across without any problems, but we did discover that some students were coming across without a user group. Now, for those not familiar with Alma fulfilment, the user group determines what you can borrow and how long. Without a user group, such as undergrad, you can't actually borrow. Now, before analytics, the only way we discovered this was when users would come to the desk saying, I can't borrow. Now, as you can imagine, if you've got a lot of new users, such as the start of term time, and they all can't borrow, or there's a few of them who can't borrow, and they're all lining up at the desk, that's a bit of an issue for our desk staff. So, we created an analytics report We run this weekly or on a daily basis if we're getting a lot of new users, and that tells us all the students that don't have a user group included, and it also lets us know the scope of the problem. So we can get back to ICT and our Student Information Service and say, look, we're getting all these records without the correct data. Also, what I love about analytics is we're able to use just the data we export from analytics, match it with Outlook email distribution lists, and assign these users a user group. And then we can do them in Alma proper. We can run a few bulk jobs to fix these up. So that's really saved us a lot of time and effort. Now, it was really interesting, while I was putting together this presentation, I was reminded of how often I use analytics to solve and identify problems. Last week, we were notified by our users that they couldn't find Google Scholar holdings for our library. It turned out it's a widespread Alma problem that I think is still occurring, and so all libraries that use Alma, you can't have your Google Scholar holdings currently missing, which is obviously a bit of an issue. And the first thing I did was, let's go to analytics and see when this problem began. So I just did a simple, show me everything for every date, how many hits or requests we got from Google as a source, and you can see straight away the date they all dropped off. So that leads me on to another point. I think Justin talked about this and so did Simon, but this quote I came across, discovery happens elsewhere, and Lorcan Dempsey's from the OCLC, and basically what he's talking about and what really influences library usability is that not all the searches and hits in Primo come directly from Primo. So that's what Google Scholar illustrates. A lot of people are getting to our Primo records from a Google Scholar link. And a lot of people also getting to Primo from open URL links in databases. So those are the one there, the library button, they click and it checks our Primo record to see if we do have it at our library. We wanted to know, for user education, branding, and where we should prioritise our resources, how often people are coming from other sources. And we found we were actually getting quite a number of people coming to Primo from other places. So we've got quite a high number coming from Google Scholar. It's dropped off in the past month because our holdings have disappeared. We've also found we're getting a lot of people coming direct from open URL links in our databases. And so that's informed us in our work processes. So now whenever we're setting up a new electronic resource, we let our database vendors know we really want open URL links set up. So we make it a priority step to set these up. And if the vendor doesn't offer these, we say this is something we would really like to see in the future. Okay, still on the topic of Primo, I'm sure everyone in this room who uses Primo is familiar with this lovely screen. Simon talked about a usability study before, and this was a pain point. Users seeing that lovely green full text available, and then they click on view online and it says, sorry, no full text available. Now the causes of this are probably too big and expensive to go into for this presentation, but usually we found the cause is poor metadata in the actual Primo Central record. So the record's in Primo, but Primo can't match it with our Alma holdings. Sometimes it can be the case that perhaps we have that journal but not that issue of that journal, or occasionally it could be a link from an open URL, or it could be a link from Google Scholar. So we wanted to know, because we know from our usability study that people aren't necessarily going to report every time they find one of these, we wanted to know what are the biggest problems people are getting. So how many times and what are our biggest offenders for no full text available errors? And this is a monthly report that just lets us know the most common ones that have the most no full text available messages, the title, the journal, and it also tells us the type of source. So if it's a Primo Central record or if it's an open URL link from a database. And finally, it lets us know the source of the record. So that's good, so we know which vendor to contact to fix their Primo records, or which vendor to let Ex Libris know to fix their vendor records. We've also set up a Talus list, which just lets people know in the reading list department what links people are clicking in Talus and getting a no full text available message. So that's directly emailed to them so they can investigate and see what's gone wrong. Now, when you're looking at problem articles, the first step you take, if you're someone who does a lot of troubleshooting like me, is to see, well, how big a problem is this? Is this just that journal article, or is it every article in that journal? So we've come up with a handy tool for all the staff that work in troubleshooting. It's called Is This Journal a Problem? You simply enter the ISSN, and then you see the number of times and the different articles in that journal that have caused a problem. So that's a really good way to instantly see the scope of the problem. And that's another thing I noticed when I was looking at our most common reports. A lot of them really were handy tools. So they were tools designed for anyone in the library to simply point and click and get the user and data and information that they needed at a glance. Okay, because let's face it, I'm talking about how wonderful analytics is, but it's not the easiest system to use. It requires a lot of learning, it's not intuitive, it's based on Oracle. I think Justin mentioned that you don't always know what everything means. Sometimes the labels they have don't match what's in Alma. So it's really important that not everyone in the library has to know how to use analytics. And furthermore, it's also really important that they don't have to come to someone like me who knows how to use analytics. So one such person who really benefits from a handy tool is our collection manager. That's not our library. And she needs to know on a regular basis what sort of holdings and items we have in our library. So what's held at the various campuses, what's held at various locations, what's in reserve, what's in storage. So what I've done is set her up with a link on her Alma dashboard. She just logs into Alma and then clicks inventory statistics, and she's taken to a nice little dashboard that gives her a big overview of exactly what's in each collection and how many are missing, how many are on the shelf, how many in loan, how many in storage, sort of all the information she needs. And she's also got separate tabs for things like reserve and storage. And importantly, if she wants to look at any particular combination of locations and libraries, she can do so without having to come to an analytics person. For instance, she wants to know what's in the audio visual collection up at the Albury Wodonga campus. She can do that with just a few clicks of the mouse, and there she goes. It spits out a lovely little table that lets her know at a glance everything she needs to know. On a okay. All right. Okay, I'll just quickly step over a few more slides, because I just wanted to mention, as useful as we found analytics, I have to admit there are some limitations that stop it from being as useful as it could be to our library. One of those is that it's not real-time information. It's updated once a day. And this means for information like circulation, where you'd really want up-to-date what's on the shelf now information, you can't get that. I know real-time availability for analytics is probably a pipe dream, but even 6 hourly would be great. Second pain point is that you can't get historical information, so you can't say, give me what was in reserve in semester 2 last year. That's just not possible. And finally, it's really difficult to get information that links two different subject areas together, so acquisitions and fulfilment. So for instance, you want information on the various fund codes and the circulation statistics for them, you can't get that. So I think that's an enhancement request, and I'm not sure if it went through the latest round, but it is something I would like to see. All right, Amelia and Anna are going to leave questions to the end of our presentations. So with that, I'm going to pass on to Amelia and Anna, and they'll talk about RMIT.
can introduce yourself while I bring it up if you like.
Hi everyone, my name's Anna. I'm Librarian Digital Collections at RMIT University, but up until about 2 weeks and 1 day ago I worked in Library Resources and Access, which is why I'm reporting on analytics.
I'm Amelia. I'm in the Library Resources area. My role is Applications Librarian. It's actually very similar to Rachel's. A lot of my work is the admin support in Alma and Primo, and also a lot of troubleshooting and some of the development work. A bit like what Rachel did, we're also not really talking about 10 reports specifically, so I put a little strike through that. And we found that we preferred to talk about the top reports. And when we first looked at this, and we were first thinking about we were still thinking in the top 10 back then, and we were wondering, how do we get this? How do we get top 10? We thought, well, is it our most used reports? And then we started sort of thinking about that, but analytics doesn't have a report on analytics reports. So you can't easily say which are our most used. So we had a quick think through and thought, well, okay, what about widgets? There's little things you create to the reports and views you create that will appear on your Alma front page when you log in. They could be daily. You see them on a regular basis. So at RMIT, we have things like the items received count, how many books or whatever items have been received each day. We have, just the number of journals per platform, things like that that can appear depending on who you are, what you want to see. But, I don't know if there was particularly any 10 that jumped out at us. So like, okay, well, what about the reports we run on a weekly basis? And we have a lot of them, things like claims returned. Someone comes in, oh, we've returned that. Okay, we need a report to go check the shelves. We've got lost loans replacements. So before we send our lost loans letter, we want to know what ones have been lost so that we can make sure we've got the right price in the email letter that goes out. So this report is run before the email goes out so that we can get that price in. But none of them stuck out as something we wanted to really talk about. So we decided to look at our top reports as those that we considered to be our most useful. Should we do that? Yeah. So most useful could be, it was the right tool for the job. It was the one we liked the most. It was the helpful report. It was the report that allowed us to discover something, usually a problem, or it was the report that was most important, usually for reporting purposes. So we're each going to take a little while to talk to you about what we each individually found to be the most, or the top reports for us, and obviously that also reflects the role that we each play or have played, and how those reports relate to that. So Anna?
Thank you, Amelia. So I'm coming at analytics from a resources and access perspective. So I'm looking at reports that have been useful to us as opposed to things that have been used the most often. These are not normally out-of-the-box reports. Either I've made them up myself or I've taken an out-of-the-box report and heavily customised it. So I'm interested in what the data stored in Alma can tell us and what it can do for us. Here we go. So a big one, as I'm sure happened with a lot of you, our Alma transition was seamless. So we use a lot of data cleanup reports. Another popular one is data collation reports, where I can pick out a lot of information for internal, external use. Expenditure reports, how much we're spending, and then we have to go back and tell that to our schools. And our call stats reports. So this is an example of one of my data cleanup reports, removing junk data from our 866 fields. When we transitioned over, the 866 fields of a lot of our books had either hardback or paperback written in them, which made for just a messy looking Primo. You couldn't say, I want to hold on this title any copy. You had to put a hold on a particular copy, and that confused students a lot. So this is what the report looked like. It's fairly simple. It's just got where the junk was and That, unfortunately, is one I ran the other week, so we still have to finish cleaning this up. And then the MMS ID, so I can pull that out, make a set of it, pull out the junk data, either edit it in Excel or edit it within Alma as a set and run a job over it. So these kind of reports that either pick up missing information or extra information, yeah, like I said, I either edit them in Excel or use a normal. If anyone else has a better way of doing this, of finding a problem, then going and seeing all instances of the problem and then bulk editing, if you've got a better way, I'd love to hear that, because it's a process. Expenditure reports. So our acquisitions coordinator uses Alma, which is not me, by the way, uses Alma to grab out all of our money data to send to the appropriate schools and also send to library executive, so that everyone can keep a track of how much money they've spent. Go. So this is what 1.4, where is it for? Put in. This is for the individual colleges. It's a heavily customised out-of-the-box report. And unfortunately, we can't use the report even as Emily has customised it as is, because as I'm sure a lot of you know, when you pull a report out of analytics into Excel, there's all these extra columns and merged and unmerged bits that you just didn't know were there. So these kind of reports, with a lot of reports where you just want to know something, require really heavy editing. If there's a way that we could simplify that, it would take out a lot of sort of tedious manpower. So this one is data collation. As I'm sure a lot of you do, we pull out all our ISBNs from our system twice a year, ship them off to YBP, Gobi, so they can match that list against their list and put that little, your library already has this, are you sure you want to buy it, button next to the titles. So this is an external use of our data, not an internal use. We don't need this. They do. Or we need them to have it, but you know what I mean, for the process. A problem is that we can't pull out all the titles at once. As you can see there, I've got it as from A to D. This is one of about 6 or 7 goes that I have to have it because I can't pull out all the rows at once. It was about 400, 500,000, so I can understand why we can't pull them all out at once, but if I could just make it 2 reports instead of 7, that would make my life a lot easier. And of course we all do this, I think I've got, no, back. We all do this manually in Excel, and as I'm sure everyone knows, Excel doesn't like ISBNs very much, so we also have to use a lot of workarounds. How are we going for time? Can I talk about call?
5 minutes, so
all right.
Skip that
yep.
one.
You'll know about call stats, so I will skip that. Bring you up to Amelia.
Yep. Thank you, Anna. My approach to top reports is a bit different to Anna's because Anna has a very problem-based and process-based needs for them. My role, because it's not as involved in those sorts of workflows, I've got a little bit more freedom as to what I want to look at. And for me, the main thing that is of interest is actually the user's experience or the user's behaviour. So one of my top reports is actually exactly the same as Rachel's for very much the same reasons. It's the link resolver usage report. And Rachel's already covered off how this can be used to solve problems. It's the link resolver usage report she was using to discover whether or not people were having trouble linking to things, that no full text available problem. So I'm not going to go into that side of it. But one of the things I do use this for, other than problem solving, is a sort of an FY or for information. So I run this one on a monthly basis, or have it emailed to me on a monthly basis. At least one of the versions of it. I have 2 versions of it. I've included them both here. I call one brief and one details. The brief one gives me the source information and totals, basically. And that gives you a bit of an idea of what it looks like. This one is for sharing with my manager. He's curious as to what the usage of the link resolver is. So this is basically a usage report for him. But I personally like to see a little bit more information, such as title information, dates, particularly where things are going wrong with the no full text availability. I want more information, so that's why I created a details one. I'm not going to bring that one up, but I wanted to mention that sometimes you've got to tweak the reports to get what you want. So sometimes you have the brief one for just the numbers, and sometimes you have the more information for particular uses. One of the things I get out of, probably you could get it either out of the details one, but the details is obviously, if you're including titles and dates, it becomes a very long report. When you suffer that how do I get it all out problem. So I do tend to use the brief one for getting an idea of how much people are aware the source of information is coming from. For instance, is the record they're selecting an Alma record? Is it a Primo Central record? And you can get a rough idea of the statistics, and it's much easier now that we've got that type of source record, as opposed to having to try and look at the underscore or the colons in the source to see where the record was coming from. And estimates over the last few months, they vary, obviously. 20% of people clicking on links appear to be coming from Alma records, about 71% coming from our Primo Central records, which says Primo Central is very important, about only 2% Google Scholar, and the rest are the other or unknown sources. I couldn't help but resist talking about Primo Analytics. And I'm only going to mention two of the Primo Analytics reports. The first one, and I've got to call this my favourite report, is a zero results report. And the other one I'm going to talk about is action usage, but I'm going to talk for a very specific purpose on that one in a moment. Here's an example of what a zero results report looks like. And this is as I share it to library staff. So this is run once a month. And every month I share the top 20, so the popular results from the popular searches usage report. And then I share the top 0 results. Now, it's not always top 20 because the number changes. I usually go for the ones that have been searched for 5 or more times. And this report gets comments from staff nearly every month. So usually along the lines of, why couldn't they find it? I can find it. And you find some staff will recognise titles or authors being the result of saying that maybe it's a textbook or something. So sharing this report with them has sparked a lot of thoughts, particularly among our liaison staff, of what have they got to do to help students find things. But it's also helped us discover some problems along the way. On this report, there are, I think, 4 ISBNs. I searched for those 4 ISBNs. 3 of them are actually for items that we have, but the particular ISBN searched isn't on the catalogue record. So I sent an email around to our catalogue staff and say, you might want to, can you add this additional ISBN? So obviously I go to Libraries Australia and search the ISBN, grab the title, search the title in Primo, there we go, I know we've got it. I only ever bother doing that for ones that reach it into this level of the report. It'll be way too time consuming to search for every ISBN that students search for. But luckily LRNA recently had, so it's our Library Resources and Access, recently had a placement student who took the time to look at data from the 1st of January to the 31st of May this year of the zero results report. And they could probably talk a lot about what she found, and I'll leave that for maybe someone else to speak about another day. But from her analysis, we're actually planning changes to the way some things are being indexed into Primo. This is because by looking at this report, she found patterns in where students were going wrong. For instance, including the addition statement in a search made it fail. So she would remove an addition statement and then be able to find the item again. And this is particularly true of textbooks. Students weren't finding their textbook because they'd included edition 6 in it, for example. So I went into our Primo backup. Okay, so by going into the Primo back office, we're able to say that addition statement isn't actually in the search index, it's in the display index. So in our sandbox environment, I've, as of last week, changed that around. So we're currently testing if having it in our in the search index is actually going to improve the discoverability. So that's just an example of how a report of where students are going in some ways wrong because they're getting 0 results can really help inform you as to how they can do things right. And I might skip over anything more on that, as much as I could talk forever on 0 results reports. Total usage, I wanted to mention this one because in Primo reports, this is before analytics, so we're using, I think, BIRT, B-I-R-T reports. We used to just get a total searches. Just the numbers, didn't really know what the parameters were. But there's no equivalent to that in the Primo Analytics. So I've been having a lot of issues going, how do I create our total searches again? Because these are used for reporting purposes. I initially did this one, which basically the search parameters is a date range and then limited by action group search. But the totals we get there are much lower than what the BIRT report used to give us. And we know that our usage hasn't dropped that much. So obviously the parameters of the BIRT report were just very different from the parameters I've put in there. So I sort of had to think about it and thought, well, what else could users be doing on a Primo interface that could count as maybe search behaviour? So I tried adding in other parameters, so things like refining a search by a facet or unticking or reticking the expand my search box and things like that. And I came to a number that's actually, this number ends up being a little bit bigger than what the BIRT reports used to give. So still tweaking, still playing, trying to get something that's a similar number, but I think at some point we are going to have to draw a line in the sand and say we changed our report from one style of report to another, and we need to just go with the numbers from then on. But obviously, until we're happy with the numbers that we see, I'm actually running both of these reports each month and sharing both numbers until we decide what we want to do. Now, Anna and I both had some future thoughts, but I don't know if we have...
Do we have time?
Time. The future thoughts were more where we thought we would be going. I'll talk for 30 seconds and you talk for 30 seconds? Okay. For me, I think the future use for us, or further uses for analytics, is going to be in trend analysis. Looking at the correlation between what users are searching and what our systems have. And just a little tidbit of information, our searches from, I think it was March this year, meteorite collision was in our top 20 searches for 2 or 3 months. Meteorite collision is something that our library quest was telling students to enter into our library search page. So that actually instantly showed us the amount of use that library quest was encouraging people to get into the system for, because for those couple of months that we ran that game, people were using that search. As soon as the game was over, it dropped.
All right, okay. 2 seconds. As I've just started as digital collections and we're using the Alma D system, or we are transferring our data into the Alma D system, what I want out of analytics is to be able to report on our digital objects.
Yep, very fast.
Okay.
I don't know if there are times for questions for all 3 of us.
I mean, with your Alma analytics, you can put them in to be shared by people. Have you guys shared them, both sites?
Not all of them, no.
Yep.
But yeah.
Okay, so this is just a really quick 10-minute overview of the various resources that are available to us as as members of the Ex Libris user community, ways we can engage with each other, ways we can engage with Ex Libris. So Helen, Jenny and I are going to
zoom through.
Okay. Which way are we going? Okay. As soon as it works out how to drive. Down.
Right.
How are we going? Down. Okay.
Yeah. So in putting this presentation together, we started off by just trying to put everything up on the board and then working out the connections between the different ways in which we can engage. So we have here the customer community in the centre, and we're looking at how, in terms of engaging with Ex Libris, most of that work we do with support issues, with software issues, we report through Salesforce, and then to Ex Libris, who responds back through Salesforce. We post to the various lists to engage with the rest of the community. We also have a way of driving enhancements in the software through NERS, through Ideas Exchange, and the Developers Network is another option that we have available for engaging with Ex Libris developers, and the Knowledge Centre, which Ex Libris revamped and in the last few months.
Okay.
NERS is an acronym for New Enhancement Request System. It's a formal process, a tool that we can use as a formal process for submitting enhancement requests for products where we get to vote on those enhancements as a community. And most of us would be familiar with NERS, having just gone through the second round of the Alma ballot. Idea Exchange is a platform that Ex Libris has provided for customers to suggest ideas. That platform is specific to Alma, Primo, Rosetta and Campus M products. And we're seeing, in the case of Alma, we're seeing monthly updates from Ex Libris on ideas that are submitted. You also can go in and monitor the top ideas, the hot ideas, you can make comments. The Developer Network, again, is an Ex Libris site that's used as a way for customers and Ex Libris to talk about ways in which we can work together to extend functionality within the products, specifically with the APIs.
I've gone to this one because this looks like. Okay, listservs. Which one to use? There's ANZREG L, which is a little bit of traffic. Primo, Alma L. I guess there's still SFX. Okay. Summon, Rosetta, and there's quite a few of these lists. They're a really good place to exchange ideas, or particularly to set the pace on feedback for really high impact events. So our New Zealand colleagues they're the early canaries, so if something's gone pear-shaped over the weekend, it always hits New Zealand first, followed by Australia. That kind of just sort of saying me too on the list after you put in your Salesforce case can be very helpful in sort of raising the visibility of a high impact issue. It's always good to check the archives and not sort of ask the same question over and over again. There's been a bit of quite a bit of tracking recently on should Alma L have job ads or not. And eventually, the moderator shut it down because yes, got ridiculous. And but if you want to join them, there's the ANZREG website, Illuma, and the Igloo websites for email lists and how to join and search the archives. Sue.
Salesforce is a really useful tool, not just for submitting the issues that you're reporting, but also for searching and discovering whether that issue has been reported by others. And I would really encourage and recommend you to publish your cases in Salesforce as the default. You can always unpublish specific cases if you need to or want to, but in publishing your case, it does become something that others in the community can search for, can look to see whether it's an issue that is similar to themselves, and also to see what the response was from Ex Libris on that case. And it gives you access to the global pool of tickets, so you can find out if it's someone else in North America has reported the problem or someone in Europe has reported the problem, what the response was. It also lets you have a sense of how many others have reported it. And there was a very good presentation that Amelia gave at ANZREG in February on how to go about constructing a Salesforce case, providing a scenario, understanding how to use the priority. And I recommend you all to go back and view that presentation. It's available for download from the ANZREG website. And Amelia's here, so you can talk to her in the break as well. But it was titled A Systematic Approach to Bug Reporting. And I think it's something that is a good touchstone for anyone that's new to the Ex Libris products, but also just as a general tool in terms of how to define a problem and how to report a problem. Other useful sites are the Ex Libris system status page. Always go there first to see if what you're experiencing is an issue that is known to Ex Libris, if it's a scheduled outage, if there is any current status information about an issue. And if what you're finding isn't on the system status page, put in a case in Salesforce, treat it as a 24/7 hub, which is one of the categories that you have in Salesforce for anything that's a system down or a component down that exists for all products. And then if you're posting to the list, please cite the case number and the priority. Ex Libris is on the list, and if we can give them as much information as possible in terms of citing case numbers, that makes it easier for them to pick those up and process them as well.
Okay, I think we skipped one. Have I skipped one?
Me.
Yes.
One.
Sorry, you're back.
Okay, so there are two main customer user groups for Ex Libris. There's Igloo, and ANZREG is part of that Igloo group. So that's the European group with the Australian New Zealand group in it. And there's also Illuna, which is the North American group. Now, Igloo and Illuna and Ex Libris have a product development collaboration agreement where Ex Libris has an obligation or a commitment to develop the top voted enhancement requests from customers for a variety of systems. So, as Sue mentioned earlier on, we've just finished the Alma cycle, and the process there is that customers submit their what they want to have put in, and everybody votes. So there's an annual opportunity for that to happen with a prioritisation of what enhancements the customer base wants to have go through. So the current process for NERS, which is the name known for that collaborative agreement, is for Primo, Alma, SFX, Voyager and Aleph. Although Aleph in Australia certainly is no longer existing, and other products are rising or declining.
Idea Exchange. Idea Exchange is open to everyone, so you don't have to be a system administrator. Just everyone in your library is able to submit ideas to Ideas Exchange. There's no commitment on Ex Libris side to develop the ideas, but they are monitored. Ideas Exchange is a good way to put forward a suggestion, to gather a bit of interest, get people to vote for it, use their 10 votes, and then it may sort of get enough momentum so that it then can become an enhancement request. And every month there's an analysis of the top ideas that are coming through. So, but with using Ideas Exchange, it is good to make sure that if someone is submitting that's not a systems person, that they are using Ex Libris language, they're using Alma language, not sort of local language, because it is an international system, and so it's important to use the terminology of the system rather than what local terminology is used. But yeah, and so you've got 10 votes, and it's really quite handy, and there are some of the things that have been on Ideas Exchange are being developed. oh, sorry, I've already said this. Start with an idea, promote it, and monitor it, and submit as an enhancement request. Sorry, I took taken over.
No, that's good.
Okay. NERS. Helen.
Okay, so with NERS, a little bit with, like Amelia's presentation earlier in the year, there is a way to crafting the perfect NERS. I'm not going to go into all of that. But again, you've got to make the terms really precise and clear. So the NERS system is maintained by the IGLU and Illuna product working groups. To vote in the cycles for enhancements, you've got to be a member of either IGLU or Illuna. Being a member of ANZREG is one thing, you've got to also be the member of IGLU to then be able to vote in the cycle. It gives the customers a really good way of putting forward an enhancement request to get it through into development. We all report things almost daily of problems that we encounter, and a whole heap will come back as an enhancement request. So there's no longer a throughput of an enhancement request through Salesforce going through necessarily to be developed. So at some stage you'll hit a roadblock and feel, right, that is what I have to put through in as an enhancement request. So you've got to really make your case to sell. You're really selling your case to the people who are going to vote for it. Therefore, the language has to be so precise and give a user a case for it so everybody really knows what's going on with it. And then the last point there, but there are other things I want to also mention, is that you make sure that you clear out any old cases. So I know in that last round of Alma enhancements that went through, we actually hadn't cleared out everything and there was stuff coming out of the arc. It was only the second cycle that we'd ever done for Alma, so we hadn't done an archiving run. But we are going to archive at the end of this cycle. So if there's anything there that you want to have brought back to go forward into the next cycle, then it will be you as somebody who submitted before that needs to go ahead and bring back your request.
So does that mean instead of the 500 that were listed, at the working group you're going to really be trying to target it so that it's a much smaller number that you're voting on?
Yes, and I don't think we realised that there were quite so many that were there before we realised that they'd all gone up for voting.
And the same thing will happen with Primo because it was just as large.
I think Primo is more
already
retroactive.
Yeah, they've been doing archiving of the enhancements in Primo for several years now.
And as much as the product working group, enhancements group, tries to eliminate the duplicates,
difficult, I know.
Very difficult, so even that they sneak through.
And that comes back to the point on language.
Yeah, and the amount of editing that the editorial group, so behind everyone puts their votes in, there's a lot of editing that has to happen for each of the requests that comes through, and a huge amount of time goes into that. So really crafting your example, your requests so that they don't have to be re-edited and sent back to you to say, is this still saying what you want, is crucial to speeding up the process.
Okay, and that one, yes, sir.
Okay, so then this is just a couple of examples in terms of working with Idea Exchange and NERS. So this is NERS.
Yes.
So this is an example of an enhancement request that UNSW placed in NERS. We found a similar idea on Ideas Exchange. So what we have done is we've put a note on the request in NERS, and on the next slide you'll see a note on Idea Exchange as well, where we're linking the two together. I think we might have gone.
Might have skipped one.
We're on the first one.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Okay.
So the benefit here is that try and work the two systems together. So use Idea Exchange when it gets close to the voting cycle. If you're not getting the results or the visibility that you want through Idea Exchange, you have the option of putting it into NERS and having it included in the ballot, and then just make the note so it's visible to anyone looking at it, the status of it.
Yep.
And it's also useful for the people that are doing the work compiling the ballot, that they can see that connection as well.
Knowledge Centre.
Okay, the Knowledge Centre. So it's the starting point for all Ex Libris information. It includes on its homepage featured topics. Each product has its own trending articles. There's an overview and roadmap highlights. You get in-context information regarding release notes and videos. You've got training, a training folder with the Alma subheading, and that will give you a whole heap of new videos for 2016 and tutorials, which are much better than previous ones. And you also will find corporate presentations there. So there is a huge wealth of information there available. And then you've got the help that's based on each of the individual products as well, usually through the product. So in the case of Alma, you've got all that wealth of information for the Alma help. Although you can have issues in still finding things within the help, but you've got all this information that is available to you.
Okay. Next, the developer network. So this is an open tech blog. It's a pretty active tech blog. So there's lots of developers both within the Ex Libris community. There's also a lot of involvement from Ex Libris staff themselves with the tech blog. So it's fairly active. It gives developers, both of us, the ability to talk directly. And we've found that if we've done something and Ex Libris are aware of something that we've done, I think when we did acquisitions, real-time acquisitions for the first time, so we were then asked by Ex Libris to sort of write up the process that we were doing, and I think we've just done that with partner records for resource sharing as well. So it is quite a good dialogue between Ex Libris and developers, and as I say, it's open, and there's more and more APIs coming through all the time. So Salesforce.
So this is really just reiterating about Salesforce, that it's for support issues rather than enhancements. And this touches on the point that Helen made earlier about what you're seeing now is a lot of responses coming back through Salesforce if it is something that is deemed an enhancement, that we're being directed to put that into the NERS for the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just a very quick...
That's the ecosystem.
Yeah, whirlwind, and we just hope that that gives you some encouragement and some insight into each of the options that are available.
Sorry. How does ANZREG want to fit into this? Because it seems sometimes, you know, we are very small, and that strategically we could be bigger if we actually strategically voted together on something. So how does ANZREG sort of see about maybe doing this?
We have done that
with the Primo ballot.
With the Primo ballot and the Primo Central Index, trying to promote Australian and New Zealand resources that haven't yet been indexed, so we have done that. There's also, I think there's an issue with Trobe and thesis records at the moment, and so there's been discussion on the ANZREG list about sort of putting in Salesforce cases to kind of encourage Trobe. And
so ANZREG is also a good avenue in which to approach
particularly Australian ones, and if you want to get some traction, and if it's an Australian issue, I think Trobe is a perfect example, because that's just causing everyone grief. So to sort of get that one, some traction on that one, get that one resolved. Many of us have actually turned off Trobe because the issues with the records and not being updated. So yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. We've got our final session before lunch. Sorry to rush everybody through in the last couple of sessions. It's Wright and Anna again talking about the USTAT Working Group that was initiated at the last ANZREG session and the progress that they've made.
All right. Just a mo. Hopefully it's on here. Aha. Great. The beginning. Hello, me again. Along with Adam Clatworthy from RMIT, along with Julie Wright from the University of Adelaide, and with Philip Bertling from Monash. We are the USTAT Working Group. So, can I get a show of hands? Who knows what USTAT is? Oh, great.
Next slide.
So you guys know what usage statistics are, hopefully what counter reports are. Yep, great. So The USTAT Working Group formed at the last ANZREG in Feb, when Julie put the call out, hey, who's working on this, who wants to work with it together, and I'm just like, oh, me. What we want it for is basically so we can work with Ex Libris on the integration of USTAT, which is currently a separate model to Alma, into Alma. We wanted to be heard and we wanted to be listened to, which can be two separate things. So briefly, what USTAT does is it either automatically harvests usage reports directly from the vendor by the Sushi XML protocol, standardized usage statistics harvesting initiative, or you can grab your reports from the vendor and manually upload. This takes forever and a day, even if you do it once a year. Alison's nodding at me because I used to do it for RMIT. And ideally, what's going to happen in the integration is that you'll be able to pull all of the reports, so journal, book, database, multimedia, out of the vendor and into your USTAT inside Alma automatically via Sushi, and then it'll be uploaded into Analytics. So you can run reports on it, run cost per use reports on it, and just be able to see what we have and how much it's being used. Usage stats are important because they are one of our major factors in purchase and subscription renewals. They're not the only one. Often we'll have a course that says you need to have the subscription to Nature in order for your course to be accredited by a particular accrediting body. So if we have a cost per use over our threshold, but it's an accreditation need, we'll keep it. Books, obviously, you buy them one-off. You don't have a subscription to them. So we can use them to justify our e-preferred stance. If we say these books or this collection was used electronically 50 times and the print book was borrowed twice, we can say, well, obviously we should be putting more money into e-books. We're getting a better return on investment. And for access issues, so if I'm looking at one of our counter reports and I'm looking at the middle of semester, say around May, and suddenly I've gone from 300 clicks to 0 clicks, I can go, that's an access issue. And the resources and access team go into it, check to see if we've got a broken link, we've got a coverage problem, something like that, and fix that up. And next is you.
So as Anna mentioned, Ex Libris actually announced at the last ANZREG session that the integration, that the loading of the usage reports was moving from USTAT to Alma. Unfortunately, right at the end, there have been delays. That we were expecting to get that happening in the March and April releases. It is now currently slated for September release, but there is a caveat on that if you have been using USTAT, then you can't start using it in Alma immediately. It will be further on in the year, in October, November, December. So I know a couple of customers may not be here today, but have asked about that, and I said, well, don't use USTAT if you haven't already started using it. Okay. The good news is that, as we were saying, that there will be a couple of other reports that you'll be able to load into Alma. It's the Platform Report 1 and the Journal Report 1A, which is the archive report. But we have been advised that they will all be Sushiable, so we'll be able to load them via Sushi. But the vendor has to be able to do their part as well and provide the ability to get them via Sushi. So we don't know exactly how that's all going to look. But there will be daily uploads into Alma Analytics. At the moment with USTAT it's weekly, so your reports can be a little bit out of date. Also, that whole manual uploading into USTAT is so time intensive that it can take...
What about the e-book reports and the reports that aren't in USTAT at the moment?
You can put book reports into USTAT,
Yeah.
You just have to manually load them, obviously, because Sushi is only available for journal reports at present.
Yeah.
We've been told that at some point in the future you will be able to harvest book reports via Sushi straight into Alma and therefore into Analytics.
Yeah. Yeah, you can have a little. They didn't actually announce that the book reports could be loaded into USTAT. I saw something in release notes about being able to report on them in analytics. So I'm thinking, well, how did the data get in there? So I went into USTAT and found out that you can load them, but you can't actually run reports in USTAT on them. So there's no reports there in USTAT. The reports are actually in analytics. But we'd already made the decision all of our reporting was going to be via analytics anyway. We didn't want to use USTAT. We're hoping also as part of this process and the move to Alma that there'll be better integration of price data, because a lot of the cases that I raised with Ex Libris were around cost per use reports not being accurate. And the good news is that they have fixed a lot of those in the last few releases, so that's great. But we're hoping that there will be no further delays. We really are wanting to see this come through in September. So as part of this working group that we formed, and we had some involvement with Ex Libris, so what we've done so far is that we've exchanged ideas between the three of us. I've also had, as I said, questions from other customers reported back to them. We've talked to Ex Libris. We've made sure that we kept that interaction going. We've had 2 webinars, one on cost per use reports and one on this new Alma loading of data to see what that looked like. And since then, or at that last session actually, they asked us whether we'd be interested in being development partners or something they called it. But anyway, we're sort of involved with this September release. So they've since asked us for some sample counter reports for testing, which we've provided. And so the next thing is that with the September release, we want to review that, see how it all works, and concentrate on these cost per use reports as well to make sure they're working. And hopefully there will be further development, because from what I've seen in the September release, it's really replicating what's in USTAT. So there's a few other things we made suggestions about even on that session, about things that could be better. And they've already made some changes, so that's all good news. And that's it. Any other questions?
It's a great example of the sort of cooperative work that we could do.
Do you have a sticker? Yes, I do. I'm just going to pull it out.
Get together, share our knowledge, and influence the way that
Getting a second one, do you? No, I'm fine.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so I'm sorry we're still rushing. Because we are a little bit late, we're going to ask you to take just half an hour for lunch. And if you're interested in joining the resource sharing special interest group meeting, can we ask you to stay now? Helen's going to start that as soon as I finish talking. And hopefully it will run only for about 20 minutes. So
Because you're young, could you just open that one?
Sure, I just need to close them so I can put my drive. Yeah. 2 seconds. How could you tell I'm young?
It's actually that one there, and if you can get it into slide mode going when you're able, it'll be really useful.
And then, so ANZ Alma resource?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thanks so much. And in slideshow view?
Yes, please. Not that I don't know how, but you know.
No worries.
Okay, I think the bulk of people have moved on, so I'll make a start in expediency to getting you to have some lunch today. Okay, go. Oh, you are? Okay, excellent. All right, so increasingly during 2016 we've had sites starting to use Alma resource sharing. So starting with UNISA South Australia, this has happened and it has moved on through the months to now be a few more libraries than that. What I'm giving you right now is my rationale for why we need this group. So currently the Australian scene, and I think New Zealand, are there any New Zealand site people here in the room? So I'll limit my comments to Australian because I'm limited in my knowledge of the New Zealand scene completely. Well, not completely, but I can't speak eloquently about it, or eloquently at all maybe. So our systems are dominated by the national system, the National Library System LAD. And then we have independently hosted systems which interact through the ISO protocol to talk to LAD and to process requests going out and in from the libraries. We have 3 main ISO ILL systems that are used within Australia. We've got Alma, which is what some of us are using in our library systems now. We have VDX, which some libraries are using independently of the National Library System, but the National Library System is VDX. And then we have Relay. So they are all ISO ILL systems in their own right. So with Alma resource sharing, moving along, we have the different models. We have the model where we have native Alma resource sharing libraries. And these use the ISO ILL protocol to interact with the LA gateway and also between Alma sites from Alma to Alma. And then we have the NSIP integration, which is happening between the Relay libraries and Alma resource sharing. So they have ISO ILL because Relay is an ISO ILL system, and many of you are from a Relay site. And that is the process. You use Relay for your borrowing and lending requests, and then you use the NSIP integration to part and parcel the rest of the processes that can't be done within Relay itself, such as loans and inventory control. And then we have also Relay being used with manual processes. So this is without the NSIP part being strapped on the end, where there are manual processes to create items and do all the loaning processes. So currently, in terms of, glasses required. Okay, so currently we have these libraries that are using Alma and the full SIP protocol. Just got to go back. And we have these libraries who are currently live with Alma. So we've got UNISA South Australia, Bond, Curtin, Southern Cross University and Charles Sturt University. This week we have New South Wales Police and Avondale College going live. In testing, or almost in testing, we have Macquarie University and University of Western Australia, and there's many to follow. So this all then is giving us reason as to why we want to move ahead. As I mentioned before, we've got these libraries, UNSW, Monash, University of Adelaide, University of Queensland, Flinders and Western Australia, all using Alma and NSIP. And then we've got some libraries using Relay, but they're not using the NSIP, and I think this list is right. So each group has its own set of issues that they want to get resolved or put forward to Ex Libris to get some action to make these systems work better. So you've got the 2 broad areas of the native Alma resource sharing, and then you've got the NSIP integration needs. So what we're looking for is a group of 4 to 5 people. If we have any more of 4 to 5 people, we're not going to be able to come to any decisions at all. But having got together that group, well, our aim is to solicit usability issues from the whole community of Alma resource sharing users. And they are related to resource sharing. So at the moment we are limiting ourselves to people who are almost live or who are live. But as soon as anybody else comes in, of course, we will incorporate their needs if they have something that is something we've missed out. But the thing we are also wanting to do is to make sure that we're not putting forward anything that is a homegrown workaround, which you see big problems in. You have to look back, step back and look at the problem and say, where is this problem, where is it coming from? So our aim is to get together this list of common woes with the product, to collate them and prioritise them. They're all listed about usability, and then to present a report to the ANZREG community. So then what, as the slide says? The then what is that then once ANZREG has approved the list of usability issues, that they go forward to the Alma product group, which isn't so hard because there's lots of people in Australia who are on that group. And then hopefully we can get approval for that list to go through to Ex Libris and the product developers. Now, that's not going to be such a hard process as well because lots of the people using on the Alma product working group are already wanting these changes to go forward. They just wanted someone to run with it. So that's why we are going to run with it. Because we're brand new to it, we feel that we've got the drive that we can push to say this is a community who has just brought this product on, we have these needs. And I have looked at some of the needs of some of the other sites in other countries, and they do pretty much overlap. There is a lot of room for development. There's a lot of room for making the product more usable. Also part of this focus, I believe, is to bring to the attention of the usability study, that initiative that Ex Libris currently has for the redevelopment and design of Alma, starting with the repository search and with managed patron services. I think that if we get this report up in a very timely manner, that because in the repository search there is a link to resource sharing, that we may be able to say, well look, you've got a link to resource sharing, why stop there? Carry on to resource sharing and have a look at all of this. If you thought the repository search screens were confused and difficult to use, have a look at these, because they've got way more on them than the repository search has, and because the two are linked, perhaps we've got a way of pushing forward. So really what I'm aiming for now is to get together a group of people who are interested in running with this, and to collaborate and to get together and to start sharing the things that we want to have put up. Now, I have got already a huge list of these things that I would like to, I'm hoping that'll get me back to the desktop. I've got together a list of about 20 that I've just made up all by myself, so let me get to the desktop. These have come together as a result of all of the testing that I've done in the last few weeks for 4 institutions and 10 libraries. And so I think this is a reasonable starting point. Some of these there may be solutions to that I haven't yet come up with, but nonetheless I've tried to put them into broad areas of general, borrowing, repository search, Primo, partners, and there's a lending one there, but it skipped over when I went down the page. Volunteers, please. Who would like to join?
Well, I'll volunteer our Amelia.
Yep.
Because, yeah, he's had a lot of correspondence with Melody and Ex Libris and we did a Libris test.
Yes.
And also, the other thing that we use is that we use the RTMail as well.
Okay, yeah. Yep.
And we don't use native Primo test.
Yep.
So we're a bit different that way.
Yep. But I think that is a common element in any case, is the request form. So
we've had to develop special reports that we run every week or so, like documents that have been up for a couple of weeks and need to be closed off because there's no kind of facility for us to do that. So there's a whole
yeah.
reports that we're using to do that.
Well, I must say, on my lot, we haven't got to reports yet. We're still going live this week. We've got 2 more this week.
Documents available for 14 days or more.
Yeah. Anybody else from an organisation that would like to join the group? Yes? Okay, excellent. So we've got, so Jenny, do you feel that your side of, will you also have usability issues to do with Relay as well?
Hey.
Well, for... No, but for your organisation, is there, I don't want to, oh no, because you don't, sorry, you used to. So is there anybody from, so Julie, for instance, your library, because I think when I look at the whole framework of Australia, we have to incorporate some element of NCIP and Monash as well, of course. So that's the way that we can look at the community itself. We don't want to just put native Alma, although you do feed into native Alma, but I think we do also have to look at anything that's...
I'll talk to Pauline and see if she wants to be involved, but I can't volunteer
Yeah.
And I'm sure she'd be influenced, and Julie would be prepared to be involved as well.
I'm interested in being involved. I mean, from our point of view, though, we're probably looking long-term and moving to the Alma.
Well, one of the things I was going to put up was, of the libraries who are using Relay and Alma, how long are you wishing to go ahead with that? But I didn't think I really.
No timeline.
I thought it would be impertinent of me to actually go ahead with that question. So
we wait and see what happens.
Yeah.
It's the same for us. We're looking for a more mature product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that we would also like to see some development of peer-to-peer
Yeah.
resource sharing within Alma libraries.
The issue with the peer-to-peer is the charging. That's the one thing that I see.
If the university librarians decide to
Yep.
get rid of charges?
Yeah. Because I'm using peer-to-peer within the UNILINC network. And it appears to be working fine. Yeah.
That university librarians will move that because, well, we said it before, but we pay a lot of money,
Yeah.
essentially in payments.
And similarly, we pay a lot of money to have our Almas, and so why not make better use of them? Yeah, excellent. All right, well, look, I'll say thank you to you all. I'll write down the various people who have nominated or suggested that they will nominate people from their institutions, and I'll be in contact because I really want to get this running really quickly. Although overly optimistic, I don't think we'll get a list to the group, to the IGLU group before the conference in September, unfortunately. I don't think any of us can run quite that fast, but I would really like to see a quick move with this so that we can actually get something running.
I think when we talked about it earlier, we talked about the model that the e-licensing group used.
Yeah.
Where they developed a questionnaire and involved the community.
Yeah.
We'll go and work on those sort of lines.
Yeah. Yeah, but I pretty much know who the community is that we're dealing with, and I only want to deal with the people who I know who are actively involved in the process now, which will cut down a lot of additional. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.